Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment from The Happy Misogynist. Today's message is for ladies only. I'm hoping to give you the opportunity to get inside the head of a men's rights activist. Well, at least this one. You see, ladies, there's a problem with the women in this culture. Yes, I know there are problems with men too. Believe me, I've heard about them for the last 40 years. Some of it true and fair, much of it neither. It was a necessary dialogue just the same. And so is this. To understand this, we need a brief look at history. Women in the past were denied voting rights, couldn't own land, and didn't have much access to employment that would give them the freedom to make it on their own. This needed to change, and of course did, as can be confirmed with a cursory glance at the world around you. I personally laud those changes. But the problem was in how we got here. The reality is that the gender roles of our history were traps for both men and women. Women were relegated to home and children, men to sacrificial roles as protectors and providers. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was just a matter of survival. And for many, many years it worked quite well to that end. But once men made the environment safe enough for women to metaphorically leave the cave, it was only natural and right that men change and allow that to happen. And ladies, we did. This is the simple but accurate truth of the matter. Men and women developed gender roles that facilitated the survival of the species, and once those roles were not necessary, they did begin the often complicated path to change. The problem here is that your knowledge of these historical events is largely shaped, convoluted rather, by feminism. Feminists taught you that your history with men was of unremitting evil, that you were chattel, slaves to men who held all power and shut you out with extreme intent. They even gave it a name, patriarchy. It is a word that has become synonymous with oppression. But feminists were loath to remind you that women and children first was the real patriarchal mantra, and that much of the social norms, even when misguided, were a product of a code adopted for the sole purpose of preserving your life. It wasn't always fair, but the unfairness wasn't always yours. Men died by that code, and trained their sons to do the same. The fact that we still do is a subject for yet another talk. So what happened? As feminist distortions were increasingly embraced and intertwined with the legitimate need for change, men did what they usually do. They reacted to the message and not the messenger, and unblocked the entrance to that cave. Many of you spit on us on the way out. Many of you still do. It has to stop. This isn't just about decency, and it's not just about the chasm of mistrust that separates us from each other, or the legions of the walking wounded from this God-forsaken gender war. It is about our future. The vilification of men that you have accepted as appropriate now translates to catastrophe for our sons, for your sons. The problem is that what we say, think, and feel about people invariably translates into what we actually do to them. Nowhere is this more evident than with our sons in the here and now. If you take an honest look at the academic environment to which our boys are subjected, you will see that their masculinity itself is under attack with ideology that teaches them they are inherently flawed. Christina Hoff Sommers documented this in her highly recommended book, The War Against Boys. She writes, "The pedagogy is designed to valorize females, such as teaching history in a woman-centered way. Boys are to be inspired to revere Anita Hill and to enjoy quilting. At the same time, schools discourage activities that are natural and traditional to boys, such as playing ball together." She goes on to say, with sad but pinpoint accuracy, most parents have no idea what their children are facing in the gender-charged atmosphere of the public schools. What Sommers didn't add to that, but I will, is the fact that most parents have no idea of this because they choose not to. As girls and girls programs increasingly flourish, boys are falling to the sidelines in ever-growing numbers. The results of that are chilling. Boys are more likely than ever to drop out of school and engage in delinquency and other problems. They are representing fewer and fewer college graduates every year. With this diminishing education and wholesale marginalization, they are on the fast track to being the second sex, that position so many feminists touted as the greatest evil in human history when they claimed it applied to women. This is the lasting legacy of spitting on men, and your sons will not be the exception. Young men now grow up to be destroyed in corrupt family court systems where women are encouraged to and even praised for using children, their children, like pawns in order to drain the father of assets. And those same children also have their badly needed connections to their fathers severed in the process. When those exploited, abused children start quite naturally to act out and get in trouble, we blame the father who was removed against his will for, of all things, being absent. And the freedom women gained when this frenzied path of vengeance and victimization went to its final end, it doesn't appear to have settled well. Women are growing increasingly violent. They are matching men in domestic violence blow for blow, and they are causing the lion's share of injury and death to children in the home. But we don't speak of these things. We are not supposed to. In your position as the identified victim and mine as the identified perpetrator, there is supposed to be an indelible silence on these matters, and for the most part there is. That silence is destroying us. And it is a silence that is maintained with the collusion of shallow, weak men and misguided, self-serving women, which is to say most of the culture. The only answer I can think of is for men and for women to change. Perhaps you will consider this before concluding that men's rights activists are whiners or woman haters or products of bad mothers. You might actually decide that most men's rights activists are men who above all else seek justice for their children, for themselves, and ultimately for you. I hope that a few of you who hear this will consider it the next time you hear someone say men are pigs, or when you hear a woman refer to her firstborn child as the insurance policy, or before you nod your head in unconsidered agreement with whatever negatives about men happen to be making the rounds. All of this will be visited on your sons and their sons. I hope, too, that some of you look at your sons and think, and ask yourself what kind of world in which you really want them to live. When your sons choose to wives and marry, I hope you consider the agony they will go through when being taken to the cleaners and robbed of their children in the family courts. You will be forced to stand by powerlessly and watch them have their hearts ripped out. As always, it'll look much different to you when the system you help maintain with your silence crushes your son, and not just some obscure unknown male whom you quietly think is getting what he deserves. And it will happen to more than half of our sons. It's clear that the best prevention for this last one is to teach our sons to choose carefully, to scrutinize a woman before committing his life and work to her, to evaluate her morals and values as a woman prior to putting a ring on her finger, or even whether it is wise anymore to marry in the first place. But how can we do this if we keep teaching them that such evaluations are the stuff of misogyny? Indeed, how can we do this if scrutinizing women at all is such a taboo? And therein lies the rub, ladies. It is indeed time, just as it was for men, for women to be held to scrutiny and to account. More importantly, it is time for women to do this on their own. I'll do my best to provide a fair and compassionate mirror in my writings and in these videos. As always, though, it is up to you whether or not that mirror is a place you want to look.